Hey there, my name is Cameron. Welcome to 3D Camera Techniques. Today, you are going to learn pro skills and become a master of the 3D camera inside of After Effects. Without these techniques, your motion design will lack dimension, and no one wants flat motion design. So let's dive in and get started. This is Motion Science. Let's begin with the 3D camera setup. Start with a new camera by going to Layer, New, Camera. Or use the shortcut Command, Option, Shift, C if you're on a Mac. In the camera settings window, there are two areas that need to be focused on. The first area is the camera type dropdown. In this dropdown, either a one-node or a two-node camera can be selected. The only difference between these two types of cameras is the way they orient. A one-node camera orients around itself. A two-node camera orients around a point of interest. You may be asking yourself, which camera mode should I use? The answer is simple. Start with the camera type that feels most comfortable to you. Camera settings can be changed at any time to fit the needs of evolving motion design, so you're never locked into one set camera. The second area of importance in the setup window are the presets. Presets are named according to focal lengths. Each one is meant to represent the behavior of a real-world camera. Each camera preset has different variables. The preset sets the angle of view, zoom, focus distance, focal length, and aperture values. Each camera preset has different variables. For example, the 15mm preset has a very wide field of view, whereas the 80mm preset has a very narrow field of view. The best way to navigate the camera inside After Effects' 3D space is to utilize the view layouts. In the view layouts, there are multiple options for viewing a scene. 2 views horizontal and vertical, 4 views, 4 views left, right, and so on. Once inside a view layout, a 3D pop-up is chosen for the angle of view. 3D pop-up views can be from the front, left, top, and so on. Also, there are 3 custom 3D pop-up views that display a bird's eye perspective. In any view, the camera can be tracked on X, Y, or Z to fine-tune the perspective. But in the custom views, the camera can also be oriented in addition to tracked. A pro tip is to use the active camera view to create cuts within the scene. With 2 or more different cameras in the same timeline, the active camera view tells After Effects to cut to whatever camera the time indicator is above. To control the 3D camera, go to the tool window where the camera controls are located. The first camera tool is called the Unified Camera tool. It replicates the camera controls found in popular 3D programs where a 3-button mouse is used. The left, center, and right button each have individual camera controls assigned to them. Without a 3-button mouse, use the additional camera tools found beneath the Unified Camera tool. By selecting each of these tools and holding down the mouse button, the camera can orbit, track on X and Y, and track on Z. Each of these camera tools can be accessed more quickly by using the shortcut C on the keyboard. Each press of the C key will cycle through the next camera tool. Every property of the 3D camera can be animated by setting keyframes. To set a keyframe, click on the stopwatch of the desired property, and then add 2 or more keyframes to that property for the camera to move in between. By keyframing the position and rotation properties, the 3D camera can emulate real-world camera techniques like seen in the following examples. To have more individual control over the position properties of the camera, a pro tip is to control-click the position property and then select Separate Dimensions. By doing this, each position property is now a separate property and can be independently keyframed. The path between keyframes that the 3D camera follows is called a motion path. Motion paths default to a linear line, but can be adjusted to be more interesting by simply adding Bezier curves. By going to the Tool window and selecting the Pen Tool drop-down menu, the Convert Vertex tool can be selected. With this tool, click and drag on any keyframe and Bezier handles will appear. Adjusting the Bezier handles can help create more interesting motion paths for the camera to follow. A pro tip is to use the Auto Orient function found under Layer, Transform, Auto Orient. The camera will orient its perspective along the motion path that it follows. Motion paths between keyframes default to a constant rate of speed. The graph editor in After Effects represents this constant rate of speed as a straight line. Keyframe assistants can slow down the rate of speed in relation to keyframes. To make camera motion less jarring, select the Position Property keyframes and go to Animation, Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. An alternative shortcut is to control-click the keyframes and select Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. The motion between keyframes is now represented as an arc in the graph editor instead of a straight line. The speed is no longer constant and the motion is less jarring. The camera's speed starts at 0, quickly builds up to 100%, and then quickly slows back down to a speed of 0. By clicking on a keyframe handle and dragging left or right, the speed arc can be refined even more. From 4 simple modes of keyframe assistant easing, multiple interesting speed variations can be made. Nulls can be used as camera rigs to add secondary motion to already established keyframes. With the camera selected, go to Layer, Camera, Create Orbit Null. The camera is now parented to a null located in the center of the scene. Keyframe the camera to rotate on its Z-axis. Also, keyframe the orbit null to rotate on its Y-axis. The camera movement is getting interesting. To make the camera movement even more exciting, add a wiggle expression. To add this expression, Option-click on the position property of the camera and type the text wiggle, parentheses, 5, 25, parentheses. Press Enter on the numeric keypad or click outside the expression box to enable the expression. The camera now has a handheld feel to it on top of its already established motion. A pro tip is to take this one step further by controlling when the expression effect happens. Add another null layer to the timeline by going to Layer, New, Null. Then with the null layer selected, add the effect Expression Controls, Slider Control. Add another instance of the slider control. Rename the first slider Frequency and the second slider Amplitude. Now, highlight the number 5 and pick whip it to the first slider. highlight the number 25 and pick whip it to the amplitude. By keyframing the frequency and amplitude sliders, the expression can be controlled. If you're asking yourself, can any number be plugged into this expression? The answer is yes. Lower numbers will have more subtle shake, while higher numbers will create more intense shake. Motion blur in After Effects simulates the blur found when real-world cameras capture on film. Computer-generated imagery, or CG, can have a very hard-edged look to it. Motion blur is a subtle but very effective technique that helps to soften the hard edge and add realism. Add motion blur by first enabling the switch set for all layers in the timeline. Then, activate the motion blur button just above the layers in the timeline. A pro tip is to increase or decrease the amount of motion blur in a composition by going to Composition Settings and clicking the Advanced tab. Under this tab, settings can be adjusted for shutter angle, shutter phase, samples per frame, and adaptive sample limit. Each motion blur example seen here has slightly different settings and has a unique motion blur. The 3D camera has many options available to it. Zoom, like in a real camera, makes the image appear closer or further away. Depth of field brings the image pixels in and out of focus. Enable depth of field by switching it on under the Options drop-down, or by double-clicking on the camera and enabling it in the Settings window. Focus distance is the distance from the camera to the focus plane. Aperture helps to bring more or less dimension to a scene by increasing or decreasing it. Blur level is the amount of blur in the depth of field. 100% is a natural blur based on the camera preset. The iris shape defaults to fast rectangle. A pro tip is to stick with the fast rectangle whenever possible. The other iris shapes do have interesting characteristics, but render much slower than the fast rectangle. All of the iris settings are options for fine-tuning the shape of the iris. And highlight gain, threshold, and saturation all have to do with boosting luminosity on out-of-focus pixels. A second pro tip is to use the preset expressions found under Layer, Camera. The first, Link Focus to Point of Interest, does just that. The expression sets the camera's focus distance to its point of interest. Link Focus Distance to Layer sets the focus to the distance between the camera's position and another layer. Or, in other words, this expression creates autofocus. And Set Focus Distance to Layer sets the focus distance at the current time to the distance at the current time. In this lesson, we explored how to set up the 3D camera, how to control the 3D camera, how to add first and secondary motion, and how to adjust the numerous options that help make the camera work for you. Now that you know the techniques to master the 3D camera, it's time to put that knowledge into action. Practice makes perfect, and the more you practice, the better you will become as a motion designer. I would love to hear your thoughts about this lesson, so please make sure to leave a comment below. Thanks for taking the time to watch, and until next time, I'm Cameron, and this is Motion Science.